She's alive. Alive! The Bride of Frankenstein.
You are listening to They Must Be Destroyed on Sight. The following podcast contains adult language, adult situations, and spoilers for the movies discussed occur often. You've been warned. Now, take it away, Dr. Rausch.
They must be destroyed on sight.
All right, welcome back. It is They Must Be Destroyed on Sight, episode 218. And I'm your host, Lee. Cursed for delving into the mysteries of life, Russell. And I'm joined by my co-host, Daniel. I hope her bones are firm. Harper, how you doing, sir?
I don't know if her bones are firm, but mine certainly is.
I think I maybe missed a part in the film that we're covering, but I thought I don't know if they sculpted any flesh over any of her bones. I don't know. it just makes it seem that way, the way he was talking there. But I assumed it was just body parts, like limbs that had bones in them already. But
yeah, well, who knows?
But yeah, we're covering Bride of Frankenstein from 1935, and this is going to be the only horror film we really do on the main They Must Be Destroyed on Sight feed this month. Going to be doing 2 bonus episodes, hopefully with Paul, where we cover a bunch of slasher films. So look for those later in the month. Also, if you guys are interested on our Blood on the Tracks, the latest episode of that is out, which is the second half of the Beach Party films, covering those soundtracks. The Beach Party films that are not official Beach Party films. They're sort of like the spin-offs and stuff like that, when they were trying to change up the formula and everything. And also the Wolfman, Lee Van Teeth, his first rock and roll show, monthly rock and roll show, is also on the feed. And of course, at the end of October, it'll be his 2-hour annual Halloween show as well. So a lot of stuff coming in the near future.
Basically, audience, what you should know is Lee has decided he would rather be a DJ than talk to me. That's really yeah. And we got a doesn't disagree, doesn't argue, just like, yeah, no, that's pretty much what's happening. Yep, no, that's fine. Yeah.
We got a bunch of comments to get through here, so
awesome. Let's do it.
We'll dig through it.
Where's the movie, you assholes?
We got one that's sort of from that area of YouTube, but it's a much different comment. Then we'll save that one for last.
Okay. Yeah.
So on our Facebook page, Martin Stone Hennessy said, in regards to Bride of Frankenstein, one of my top 5 favorite films, which is pretty high praise, but one I would believe, because it's a great film.
It is. I mean, it's not in my top 5 favorite films, but it deserves. I mean, there's no reason it isn't. It just isn't. But
we will get into it. We will be giving plenty of blowjob time to this film, I think, when we get into it. So Robert Ward, speaking on our episode on The Thin Man, says, at the end of the latest episode, I was really screaming at Lee and Daniel. There was a regular live... So I guess this is in kind of regards to, like, why has no one ever really remade The Thin Man? He said, at the end of the latest episode, I was really screaming at Lee and Daniel. There was a regular live show once that was also released as a podcast called The Thrilling Adventure Hour. The show was broken into segments at a half-hour long each and presented as old-time radio-style comedies. One show is called Beyond Belief, a take on Thin Man, about two lush socialites that begrudgingly get drawn into supernatural cases, no matter how much they try avoiding them. Lee and Daniel seem to be really hitting the A-list, so allow me to present Frank and Sadie Doyle of Beyond Belief, Paul F. Tompkins, and Paget Brewster. And Paul F. Tompkins.
Amazing casting, honestly.
Yeah.
Like, that's... Yeah, no, that's perfect. So, I saw that comment. I have not had a chance to listen yet, but I definitely will at some point. Like this, I would watch that TV series so hard. Like, it would be so amazing.
Yeah, Robert Ward provided a link, so we will be digging into that, and I'll put that in the show notes as well for anyone who's interested. Then we move on to some YouTube comments here. Well, first YouTube comment anyway. So this is from Arthur Workman, and this is on our Cleopatra Jones TNT Jackson episode.
Wow. Blast from the past. All right.
Like episode 81 or something like that.
Jesus Christ. That feels like a wholly different world, right? You know, but yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Just about all of those black films had bad acting. No one's that blind to it. We who were around during that era saw them for what they were. They were great on entertainment, but bad on acting, except for the film Sounder, which was and still is a great film. I should look that up. I hadn't heard of that one. So
no, I was either, so
yeah. I was shocked back then when it got nominated for an Oscar, even though it didn't win. I was shocked the White Academy Awards actually took the time to acknowledge it as that great of a film. I still think Claudine should have been not just nominated, but actually won an Oscar. I should have dug a little deeper here to see what he's referencing. Claudine might be a film, or maybe it was someone in Sounder. I don't know.
No, that sounds like someone who was in Sounder.
Yeah, I'm guessing that's what it is. As he goes on here, he says that was the only film back then that actually showed black life in any truthful form without it being insulting, let alone fictional. Not sure if the writer was black or the director was either, but it shows my black people in real life, honest and seriously authentic setting. The biggest insult to many action-packed films starring women was when they dubbed white men to do the black actors' stunts, like doing backflips, as you could easily see it was a white man. Talk about not paying attention to in the editing room, LOL. Yeah, there is some of that in some of the really low-rent blaxploitation films where you can see some pretty obvious stunt actors, and sometimes they were white stunt actors playing black people, yeah.
Yeah, this is Sounder from 1972, directed by Martha Ritt, who is, I'm looking at his photo on Wikipedia, who is not black, but starring Cicely Tyson, Paul Winfield, and Kevin Hooks. And it's a period piece and made in set in 1933 Louisiana about, black life in the Great Depression. And we should put this on our list.
Yeah, we should do that. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that looks really good. So thank you.
Yeah, thanks for that comment, Arthur.
Also, it is kind of the thing of like, we're not young men at this point. I don't think we can pretend to be young men, but it is kind of amazing when we get comments from people who are listening to this podcast or who kind of like stumble upon it, who are like, oh yeah, I remember watching these films in the theaters back in the day when I was a teenager. And it's like, yeah, you're like 65 years old and you're listening to this podcast, and what don't you have better things to do with your life? But also, thank you very much. So, it's great.
Yeah, during the pandemic, nobody's got anything better to do with their lives, I guess, at the moment, but except for like trying to preserve it.
Right. Preserve your life and hope Donald Trump dies peacefully in his sleep of coronavirus.
In Minecraft.
Yeah.
If Minecraft was real life. And then we have a comment. These are hard to check. I have to go into my fucking little tablet to check these things because Podbean doesn't give me an option to check them in a browser on a fucking PC. But my friend Lee Hardy, who is the female Lee of our little group of friends, said on our episode of Snatch, love this movie, paying a compliment to you here, That was the best synopsis I've ever heard for this movie. And then she goes on to say, the soundtrack, the last fight scene, need to rewatch this movie again. So there you go.
Awesome. That's back when I was actually writing synopses for these, right? Yeah. Like back when I gave a shit about this podcast. That's what I'm saying. Yeah.
Not the old bitter jaded Daniel now who just shows up for the money.
Yeah, just shows up and gets paid and goes away.
And let's see here. Did I have another one there? No. Okay, and we have our last comment here, and this is our bad side of YouTube. I should make up like some sort of fucking little sound drop for like shitty YouTube comments at this point. This is from someone called Tyrone Kumundodorus. And this is on our Bad Day at Black Rock episode. Which
why is that the one? That's always the one. That's always the one. Okay, go ahead. Yeah.
And I don't know what the fuck is going on.
Maybe it's just hard to find. Maybe people just don't know where to find it. And so, I don't know. Like, not a whole lot of people talk about Bad Day at Black Rock. People know that it's like a big famous film because Paul Thomas Anderson has talked a lot about it.
Yeah.
And Martin Scorsese talked about it in his like long documentary about, but maybe it's like not really talked about outside of that. And so then people find our video and suddenly like, I think that's the explanation ultimately. So
yeah,
lay this on me. I'm excited.
Yeah. And I quote, the satanic anti-American Jew, spelled J-O-O, always causing trouble, stir up hate, typical Talmud demon.
Oh.
Was Spencer Tracy Jewish?
I don't think so.
I would think not.
Actually, you should probably. I'm gonna. I'll go find this guy. It's gonna be fine.
Well, the thing is, YouTube. It notified me of his comment, right? But YouTube seems a lot stricter now on what comments it will actually let get posted under videos. Like if you actually go to the video, the episode, it's not there. So
interesting. Yeah. No, Spencer Tracy was Irish Catholic.
Mm. So like the direct opposite of Jewish, basically.
Right. I mean, they were both hated by the 1920s Klan, just to be clear, interlopers in society. No, I think this is generic YouTube hatred, although it might be coming from my other podcast. It's entirely possible.
Could be.
So yeah, screenshot that for me.
Okay.
Don't worry.
Yeah.
Well, we can take care of this shit. It's fine.
All right. So we're going to take a break. We're going to play a little bit of music, podcast promo. We're going to come back and talk about The Bride of Frankenstein.
You ungodly warlock.
Howdy, folks. You like blood, violence, freaks and nature?
You come to the right place. My name is Gary, and I'm your guide to Sin and Beef Podcast. Every episode, we not only deliver film reviews, we also dismantle some of your favorite and most hated films. Sometimes for the better, and sometimes for the worse.
Hey, you shut your face! If we want to hear you talk, I will shove my arm up your ass and work your mouth like a puppet.
Alright, calm down. Every show I hope to have a new co-host, podcasters and listeners alike. That's right, I'm talking to you people. I take all comers.
You're slapped.
That's not very nice. The only rules, well, let's ask the best cooler in the business.
All you have to do is follow 3 simple rules. 1, never underestimate your opponent. Expect the unexpected. 2, take it outside. Never start anything inside the bar unless it's absolutely necessary. And 3, be nice.
So join the insanity and please vent your frustrations. I'm available on TalkShoe, iTunes, and Stitcher Smart Radio. And remember, here at the Sin and Beef Podcast, if you got beef, I've got the grinder.
You ungodly warlock.
The Bride of Frankenstein from 1935. This is directed by someone you may have heard about on this podcast before, James Whale. Covered a couple of his movies now. The writing credits are as follows. First, we get Mary Shelley, who, of course, penned the original Frankenstein.
And who appears in this film in real life. Yeah. That was her. That was actually her. She just, they had footage from 1818.
It was amazing that they had a camera back then that was so like clear. Like it was
clearly. Yeah, no. I don't know. Like they had this really like awesome footage. It's great. Yeah.
I mean, this whole thing was like a documentary, right? Like,
and Mary Shelley was like a bomb, like a bombshell, right?
Jesus Christ! Yeah. I was like, okay, oh, that's right. We're past the code now. Damn it. Although James Whale doesn't seem to think so. He's like, I'm gonna throw some shit in here, boys.
He's doing some things.
Yeah,
we'll get there.
The writing for the film, William Hurlbut, who was a playwright who briefly worked in movies. He came in and did Imitation of Life in 1934, and that's kind of the only big thing I think he's known for. He just kind of briefly, he just had a cup of coffee basically in cinema. Then we got John L. Balderston, who is a big-time player as far as the Universal monsters go. He wrote on Dracula, Frankenstein, The Mummy, Mark of the Vampire, Mad Love, Dracula's Daughter, Gaslight, and The Last of the Mohicans, the original Last of the Mohicans from the 30s.
I was not aware there was an original Last of the Mohicans, but
yeah,
awesome, good.
So yeah, apparently the one from the 90s is kind of just a remake of that, or a re-envisioning of some sort.
I was not aware of that. It sounds like something we should check out at some point. Yeah.
Also interesting about this guy, as a foreign correspondent before he got into the movies, he covered the opening of King Tut's tomb in Egypt years before he wrote
or something.
Yeah, so quite a while before he ended up writing the screenplay for The Mummy in 32. So yeah.
Well, that's what happens. You're like, hey, I've been to Egypt once. Let's write a movie.
And then we have the cast here, and I didn't get into the cast background because honestly, we kind of covered most of these people in previous James Whale's films. Because, yeah. So we got Boris Karloff as the monster. Here, he's actually credited as Karloff.
I always love just seeing like Karloff, like it's such a great like. It's very of that moment, and so like I know that like old school like Universal horror fans, it's kind of old hat, but for me, I still like look at that and I get a little thrill from it. It's great,
we got the excellent Colin Clive here as Henry Frankenstein. We got Valerie Hobson playing Elizabeth Frankenstein, and we have Ernest Thesiger here as Doctor Pretorius, who is just great in this fucking film. And of course, we had him in Old Dark House as well. We got Elsa Lanchester as Mary Wollstonecraft Shelley, which is not Mary Shelley's actual real name. I don't know why they changed it for this. It doesn't really make sense. But she plays Mary Shelley in this and the bride. So she's doing a dual thing here.
Really interesting move that the film does there. And she worked into late in her life. Like she had a very long career. I did check her out, and she's
recording career as well. She did all these like old body, like Cockney, like English bar songs and stuff like that. She did a like a whole album of them back in the day. So it was
I'm gonna seek that out and try to listen to it tomorrow.
It's all on YouTube.
Yeah. No, it's awesome. Yeah.
We have Gavin Gordon as Lord Byron, Douglas Walton as Percy Blish Shelley, or Bleish Shelley? I don't know.
Percy Shelley. Fuck it. Doesn't matter.
Yeah, it's Percy Shelley. Una O'Connor is Minnie. I'm going to have to talk about her in this film. E. Clive is the Burgermeister. He was the bumbling, what's all this in cop in The Invisible Man. Lucian Privel as the butler, O.P. Heggie as the hermit, Dwight Fry as Carl Glutz, Reginald Barlow as Hans, Mary Gordon as Hans' wife, Anne Darling as shepherdess, Ted Billings as Ludwig, and then we have two uncredited early roles here, Walter Brennan as a peasant, and John Carradine, again making an uncredited appearance in a James Whale film as a hunter. one of the guys who find the monster at the old blind man's shack. Yeah. So we have a synopsis here from Jay Sperlin on IMDb. Mary Shelley, author of Frankenstein or The Modern Prometheus, reveals to Percy Shelley and Lord Byron that Henry Frankenstein and his monster did not die. Both lived and went on to even stranger misadventures than before. As the new story begins, Henry wants nothing more than to settle into a peaceful life with his new bride. But his old professor, the sinister Doctor Pretorius, now disgraced, appears unexpectedly. Eventually, he and the monster blackmail him into continuing his work. The monster wants his creator to build him a friend, and Pretorius wants to see dead tissue become a living woman. Henry is forced to give his creature a bride. And yeah, that's a good little teaser synopsis there. I like that. Sure. Is this first time watch for you?
I mean, it's kind of one of those that like I watched back in the day when I was like checking boxes on the list of things to watch. I never really had a clear memory of it, but like it has such like kind of a large like cultural component that I felt like I kind of have seen it. This is the first time I really sat down and watched it, you know, with intent, you know, to kind of talk about it. It's fucking amazing. Of course, it's fucking amazing. Like, I'm not going to count this as a first time watch. If it were, it would easily make a top 10 list for the year. Like, there's no question about that. Yeah, no, I love that. I love the kind of the framing device. Not really a framing device, just sort of like an intro device, right? You know, like where, you know, oh, we're talking about the movie, like we're talking about the book, which at the time was 110 years old or so, 115 years old or something like that. And now is like 200 years old, you know, but which at the time was, you know, like we're kind of at the beginning of this like horror genre, of this horror era, right? And so we're going to kind of talk about that, and we're going to use that as a way to lean into, well, no, there's more to the story, right? There's more going on than like the original thing that we told you back in the original book. And we're like putting this in the mouth of the author of Mary Shelley, right? Like in this kind of hypothetical scenario. And so she's going like, and here's the rest of the story, and everything goes completely batshit. And that's sort of the, you know, and it's an interesting move there, right? You know, it's like, oh yeah, it turns out, you know, we're going to do another sequel tomorrow to Huckleberry Finn. And it turns out, Huck Finn went to space. Or whatever. That's sort of what, you know.
It's pretty it's pretty great. Like, it's pretty smart of Whale to like have that sort of happen, because it's like all bets are off, no restrictions. This is Mary Shelley herself, motherfucker, telling you how the story went. So
exactly. And then it turns out at the end I didn't want to marry Frankenstein. That's because like it's the same actress at the end. Very interesting choices, like really like fascinating, like some of the internal dialogue. I think, you know, kind of, I mean, it's a great film. Like, there's no question here. I think kind of towards the middle, it gets a little vignette-y, where there's a little bit of a, you know, kind of, okay, we're going to see the hermit, and we're going to hang out with the hermit for a while, and we're going to kind of see some hunters, and we're going to kind of get caught and everything. Like, it kind of loses focus a little bit. But I think it overall, like, I think this film, obviously very well made. Obviously, it's got a lot of things that it's trying to say. I think it says most of them really effectively. And just overall a great film. So
yeah, I'm gonna count this as a first time watch, because I do know I sort of like lazily watched this as a child a long time ago on TV, and you know, and then I mean, we all have sort of the pop culture sort of references of the bride, and her image is just like, you know, it's kind of implanted in your mind. There's like literally probably nobody from at least our generation that has not seen an image of the Bride of Frankenstein at some point.
Well,
right?
And I think most of us see young Frankenstein first, right? Before we see, I mean, you know, I don't know about you, but before I ever saw any of the James Whale stuff, I saw young Frankenstein way earlier than that. You know,
I can't help but ever think of like when Colin Clive does, "She's alive! She's alive!" It's like weird science.
It's weird science.
It's kind of like The Simpsons ruining things for you. It's like weird science kind of ruined that for me in a little bit.
Just a little bit, right? As good as weird science is, it isn't as good as Bride of Frankenstein.
No, not even on the same fucking level. But yeah, that opening's really neat. Again, like, you know, Whale, he just constructs this nice little thing where it's like I get to tell the story however I want, which is funny because she's recounting like, oh, you know, we had the first movie And that's Mary Shelley's story, although the first movie is not particularly close to Mary Shelley's story at all.
Right.
Whereas this movie actually gets closer to the source material than the first movie does, because it has things like the monster talking. It has the vignette with the blind man in the woods, because those are all things from the actual novel. And I think it does a good job. Like it's much more a horror comedy this time. Like James Whale did not immediately make a sequel, even though they wanted one right away back in the day.
This is 4 years later, which is like an eternity for these things. I mean, we're very used to, you know, like the Thin Man series, in which, like, oh yeah, they made 9 films in 7 years or whatever. You know, that's an exaggeration, but it's not much of an exaggeration. Like, it's very clear that they would churn this stuff out. And so, coming back 4 years later, I mean, this is like it, and also. There is a pre and post code element here, right? Like, and very clearly there's a divide in terms of like kind of what is being made. I mean, also we're at the very early days of like sound and cinema. I mean, I hate to even talk about it, you know, like 31 is 4 years into the advent of sound. And now I know it's only 8 years, but that's twice as long, right? And so there's just a different technical era. One of the things that I say about this film that I really admired just kind of watching it was this is among the most technically accomplished films like of its era. And by of its era, I mean up until 1980. Like, you know, like this is astonishing in terms of like its technical sophistication.
It's pretty seamless.
Really, up until like Star Wars, like you're not going to see like better special effects than this. Like it's astonishing how well this is made.
Yeah, and so, like I say, more of a comedy, but I mean, there's still horrific things here. Like, it's when you think about it, it's kind of goddamn grim. Like, in the very opening, the parents of the little girl who gets accidentally drowned in the first Frankenstein, they want to make sure the monster's dead. So they're looking at the burnt down windmill or whatever that they chased the monster into at the end of the first film, and the husband, he falls into like the lake or whatever underneath the fucking windmill, the river or whatever, and the monster comes out from the water and just like kills him, drowns him, or smashes him against a wall or whatever. And then the monster climbs up and pulls the woman, throws her, and we graphically see her like hit the fucking ledge going down and into the water to her death. So you get a couple moments like that. But yeah, just, you're saying technically accomplished, just these big, grand, beautiful sets, both in the interiors and the exteriors. Interesting that, code's in this now. So there's like this hugely overt Christian imagery to this film. Like there's some defining of good and evil, but at the same time, I feel like James Whale is kind of subverting that stuff a little bit. Like
no, definitely. Yeah, I know. He doesn't take that shit. I mean, there is a sort of good and evil element to it, but it isn't like it doesn't. Even though the film is sort of hewing to this kind of like Christian idea of it, it's also kind of asking that question about like, because the monster is clearly like, you show up in a horror film and you expect the monster to be evil.
Yeah,
it's just even in 35, that's a thing that you expect, right? But the monster is ultimately the hero of the film, you know, at the end, right? And he's kind of learning to talk, and he kind of meets the hermit, and ultimately, like shades of like Night of the Living Dead, you know, like the hunters come in, evil, this guy, like he's been rampaging the countryside. It's like, no, well, maybe we should ask some questions about that before we just start shooting. And he burns down the guy's house by accident, you know.
And where's that old blind man go, man? Because I mean that's one of the as much as you're right, like it does kind of meander in the middle with that a bit, because it's just like we got to give the monster some stuff to do, I guess, is kind of their idea.
Well, Karloff is kind of the big star, so of course you got to give it. Like it's almost not. I mean, you don't even really need Frankenstein's monster in this, like, you know, in terms of the structure of the thing. Like, you know, he can kind of be in at the beginning and the end, and just kind of like you don't need any of that. I mean, I think it thematically works, and I'm not saying it's bad material. I'm just saying like you could rewrite this without even including Frankenstein at all. Like, you know.
Right. But yeah, so like we do have this sort of extended scene where, you know, he meets the hermit, and this is, you know, directly from the text for the most part. And it turns into like a kind of a buddy comedy kind of thing for a while, like kind of almost like a stoner comedy, because you know the hermit's like, oh hey dude, like I'm just really lonely, you want to hang out with me, here's some smoke, and that that cigar looks like a big fat blunt to me. I don't know about you, but reefer they would call it at the time for sure. It reminded me of I don't know if you've seen Truffaut's The Wild Child. No.
That's it's a film. It's Truffaut actually. I believe he starred in this. Sorry, it's been a long time since I've seen it, but it is about like this child who's like was raised by wolves or whatever, who kind of comes in, and it's kind of about, we're going to train this child to be like kind of a moral figure, and the whole point is that at the end, the doctor who's like training him kind of is unjust to this child. And the child responds negatively and does not respond, shows like a sense of kind of moral objectivity at the end, right? In terms of when he is like cheated out of something. I forget the exact details of it. And so, you know, but the whole like structure of it is like teaching the child to talk and teaching the child like, you know, how to like do certain things. And there's a little bit of that kind of going on here. And so it would not surprise me if, although the Truffaut film was based on kind of a real life incident, it wouldn't surprise me if like some of the like structure of that was built around some of this like literally like 4-minute sequence in Bride of Frankenstein, right? You know?
Yeah, and you know, he's like, here, have a smoke and drink some wine. You know, the fucking
wine good,
drink good. It's like, yeah, Monster's getting in. He's down to party, man. He's down to party now. He wants to fuck. That's kind of.
It's like, all right. My dick now needs some attention.
Yeah,
I need some flesh. I need some flesh around my dick. That's what's happening right now.
But the plot kind of does depend on like the monster kind of randomly walking around places. Like eventually it gets found and chased again. Gets put first it gets found, chased, crucified, put in jail, escapes from jail, finds the hermit, gets found again.
Yeah, no, I mean, there's a lot of just kind of like, you know, stuff happening in the middle of the film. The thing that James Whale seems really interested in is the Pretorius Frankenstein relationship and the sort of like building of the Bride of Frankenstein, and then like kind of brings in this Frankenstein's monster stuff as a way of, you know, padding out the runtime a bit, although this is only like an hour and 15 minutes long or something. But he brings all that in as a way, you know, pad the runtime, but also kind of play with the thematics and sort of justify sort of the speaking role that the monster is going to have at the end, and to justify the way the plot ends. So I mean, it's kind of parallel stories. It's A plot and B plot. But clearly, what the movie's really interested in is the Pretorius Frankenstein relationship.
Yeah, and Pretorius here, Thesiger, he's just this foppish reptilian, amoral scientific monster kind of guy. Repeats the joke of drinking gin that he did from Old Dark House. You know, it's like the only thing he drinks or whatever. And a couple times he says, you know, drinking gin's my only weakness. I think he at one point says like smoking a cigar is my only weakness, or, you know, like he keeps making excuses for his habits. You know, it's interesting here. More fantastical elements come in, and even like Frankenstein's like, when he looks at the experiments that Pretorius shows him, it's like, this isn't what I do, which is science. This is magic, because Pretorius actually comes with homunculi, like living creatures he's created, miniature living humans, basically, that he's created, and somehow managed to dress up and style their hair and all this other shit.
And this is where I look at like the effects are about as good as you're gonna see in a film like this up until like Star Wars. Like this,
it's better than the Invisible Man.
That stuff looks phenomenal. Like it's you know, for a film of this type, it's seamless. You know?
I think it's the same guy who did the Invisible Man, and it's even better. Like it's seamless pretty much here, and it looks great. And but I kind of thinking like I get
something like Who Framed Roger Rabbit doesn't look, which is a technical marvel. I really like Who Framed Roger Rabbit. I grew up on that movie. That's a phenomenal movie. But even that has kind of technical limitations that you don't see in that like little sequence in Bride of Frankenstein. Like,
yeah, and again, I think part of it is it's in black and white that can hide a lot of sins, you know. Like, but it's interesting. Pretorius, like he can create life on a level that's way above what Frankenstein was doing with the monster.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
I guess the only excuse is he can't, for some fucked up reason, he can't create life-size people. So
there's this idea, and man, I need to look up the biology, because the original like homunculus idea is that prior to our current understanding of heredity and genetics, right? Like, you know, there's this idea that there are like kind of little people living inside of like semen that are being implanted inside of the womb, which is just like a field, like a fertile field, right? And so that's where the idea that semen is seed, that's literally where the idea comes from. And of course, what that means is that inside that seed, there are other like tiny people living inside that, and inside that there are other tiny people. So there is like kind of this like logical absurdity there, right? But like this was like legitimate biology. This was like legitimately like kind of what early biologists would have believed about kind of like the human body. And so the idea that maybe you can like take the thing that's in like semen and like grow it in some like medium, and there's like they talk about like a saline solution, like increase the saline solution drip into the heart, and the heart is the most complex organ in the body, et cetera, you know. Like, but the idea that you could grow it, but you can't grow it beyond a certain point, because like you can't give it this like vitality, this like life force or whatever. And this really does reflect a kind of difference between like the way that the science was seen in like 1818 versus what in 1930, even in 1935, Darwin happened in the meantime, you know. And there's a bunch of like eugenics shit kind of happening in the 30s, and like we've talked a lot about that in kind of previous episodes. You know, at the same time, like there's a very different kind of idea about, we then had an understanding of genetics. I mean, the discovery of DNA wasn't for another like 18 years or so. There was this idea that there is this kind of heritable material, and Mendelian genetics had kind of been kind of rediscovered, and we're in this era of like this kind of modern synthesis. Sorry, this is completely boring to the audience, you know, because nobody wants to listen to me talk about biology. There really is like a thing that's happening in this story, and like the idea that he's got homunculi that where you can grow them to a certain point, but they don't grow beyond that because we don't have the ability to like grow them to further size. That sort of makes sense in the sense of this kind of 19th century science, in the sense of this kind of idea about this is how life is born, versus like Frankenstein's thing is like, I'm going to stitch together dead body parts, and I'm going to take advantage of electricity, which, you know, your body and mine are built on like both electrochemical gradients within our cells, but also our brains are like fed by electrical impulses, right? And so this idea that like once we discovered electricity, and the whole like kite thing like connects to like Benjamin Franklin, and you know, it is this kind of like sense of modernity that's being kind of brought into this. And so there is this kind of sense in which what Pretorius is doing, and even the name Pretorius kind of lends to this Linnaeus kind of like 17th century gentleman adventurer scientist, or this kind of like, versus Frankenstein, who is, you know, this Germanic you know, chemist or whatever. You are seeing this kind of like mix of like this kind of this old school view of the way that life science works versus this kind of more newfangled thing, because what Frankenstein can do is animate parts that already existed using this kind of brand new technology called electricity. And what Pretorius can do is like grow the homunculi from the tiny things that already existed, but he can't really do anything new. And so there is this kind of sense in which the two of them need to kind of combine forces in order to make the bride. And so like, I don't know that any of that was really on the minds of the people making the film, but it's certainly there in the text. Like, it's certainly there on screen. Yeah. It's to me, that stuff is fascinating. Right.
Yeah. And I wasn't aware of
completely derailed everything that you were
no, it actually didn't. I wasn't aware of that side of homunculi. I was always under the assumption that basically homunculi was more based in a magic kind of thing, where it was like an alchemist.
Well, go back. I mean, Louis Pasteur, after Louis Pasteur was born in 1822. It isn't until the 1850s that he even synthesizes quote unquote organic compounds from non-living material. At the time that the original novel was written, there was this thought that there's living stuff, there's stuff that's alive, and there's stuff that's not. Yeah. And they're completely different things. And this is where you get things like the vital force and, all that sort of stuff. And the idea that, no, it's all chemistry. We can actually make compounds that are from life, from things that are not alive. That was a huge revelation in the mid 1850s, right? And so to say that the homunculus concept seems kind of drawn from alchemy, it seems drawn from religion, or it seems drawn from nobody fucking knew how this shit worked. And of course there was a deep misogyny in the all the woman does is really just provide the fertile field for the man coming in and laying the seed, which is actually the source of all life. No, that's actually not how it works at all. But it's fine. We understand. You were deeply misogynistic 19th century science. It's fine. It wasn't, but we're not going to blame you for that.
Yeah, so it's good stuff. The performances, I mean, almost entirely across the board are good. I do have one stickler here. Una O'Connor as was it Maggie or whatever?
Minnie?
Yeah, I can't do it. Every time, I get what she's doing. I get that it's supposed to be a comedy character and stuff. Yeah. But she could smash.
She's very broad. She's very broad.
She could smash.
I like her in the movie. I mean, I'm gonna say I really like the performance, but I don't like it for objective reasons. I just think she's I don't know. I just think she's really funny. So it's fine.
If she could just turn it down a few decibels, because it's my God,
she's practically like an 80s sitcom. She's practically just kind of wandering in and going "Oh my Lord," or whatever. It's
I think my favorite performance in this though is strong second to Karloff, because he gets to do more here. He gets to talk, although Karloff himself did not like the monster being able to talk. Apparently,
which is interesting. Yeah.
I think it actually part of it had to do with his makeup and shit too. It was he didn't want to do it because he had to I don't know if he wore them in this film. I think he wore it in the first film, but not in this film. And his face is noticeably a little bit wider, because he had a prosthetic thing in his mouth to basically suck the sides of his face in a bit more, make him look a bit more. Yeah. But who knows? But
I can imagine that's difficult to talk through. So he had to learn to talk again for the 18 lines he has in this movie.
But Ernest Thesiger, I think he steals this for me.
Yeah. I just really want to see a whole movie just for this guy. Yeah.
I love everything he does. I love how he went down to the crypt looking for some body parts and shit to make this Bride of Frankenstein, and he decides to take a break and just eat and drink wine on this coffin, and then he encounters the Frankenstein's monster and befriends him, or whatever. He's like, "Oh, well, here, have a smoke. You like to smoke?" And Frankenstein's already a fucking pothead at this point. "Yeah, I like to smoke. And I like to drink too. You got some of that? Shit."
"Oh, well, I'm down in the crypt looking for dead bodies of pretty young girls that I can. Oh man, I'm tired. I gotta lie down. I gotta get some wine and a sandwich. It's a thing."
I love that. I love any villain who's more concerned with his own problems than he is the absolute just moral decrepitude and just how awful the thing he's doing. He's that doesn't affect him at all. He's more concerned with, I got to eat and drink here. I got to sit down and stop for a little bit. I'll start finding body parts later. I got to have supper, man. That's all there is to it.
Yeah. Gotta eat something. Gotta consume your calories in order to do your alchemical science, right?
Yeah.
One of my favorite scenes is the scene with the homunculi, by the way, in terms of his performance and the way that he's very proud of the thing, and then he's like, "Look, I've got a queen," And like he shows it to Dr. Frankenstein, and it's like, what the fuck is that? And it's like, and then there's the king. Look at the king, and he's like fat, and he's eating the chicken leg. Yeah. And then like the king is like escaping from the bottle. And no, we got to keep these two apart. No telling what's going to happen if they get together. Yeah. And so he has to move the king over and put I think it's like a cup and saucer on top of the vessel in order to like keep the king in his little cage. Like, no. The king has to. The king is just gonna like get over and we'll start fucking everybody. If there's
we didn't see 5 minutes later where the king suffocated because he forgot to take the cup and saucer off or whatever. It's like, but it's actually that's interesting because it actually kind of foreshadows the ending of the film because the queen wants nothing to do with the little miniature king. Like, she's like, fuck this guy.
Yeah, don't fuck him. It's really
and.
Of course, what these are like people like grown from sperm. Presumably, I mean, I don't know exactly how. I don't think there's any description of like how he did this. Right?
He traveled to like fucking Bavaria or something and jerked off the royal family and like.
I can just imagine he goes to Bavaria and he's like, I have a petri dish here. I just need to collect a sample. Please lay out the royal cock.
Yeah.
And then just, don't worry, this is for science. It's for science.
I don't know how Pretorius gets to do any of this stuff because at the point where he comes to Frankenstein's manor or whatever and knocks on the door, he's disgraced. He's got no money. He's got nothing. He just comes in the night in a fucking... I
kind of get the feeling that like he sort of has like some seed capital, which I say... with the pun intended, kind of back in his early days of being like, a respected scientist. And then, he wasn't producing results or nobody liked the things that he was doing. He showed like the early example of the homunculus and like people were like, what the fuck is that? You were doing disgusting things. You don't need to be in our institution anymore. And then he kind of goes off and has his own like kind of little, doing his little mad science stuff on his own, and then he comes back to Frankenstein and is like, hey, look, you've got some academic credentials. You are going to be able to bring me back to the limelight. That's essentially the story, right?
Yeah. I feel like Pretorius, like if he wanted to, he could have just easily like sort of slipped into one of those freak show carnivals that we see in like The Man Who Laughs, like he could, it's like
or freaks, yeah,
or freaks. I got some freaks for you, baby. Look what I got here. Like he could make
what I got here. I got a horny king. He's 6 inches tall, and I don't mean his cock. That's the
Yeah, I mean, when you think about it, it's just kind of the prelude to like Tom Thumb or something like that, right? It's just like, look what I got some miniature people here.
There's a whole other movie that you can like, and this is the richness of this film, right? There's a whole other movie you can imagine that's like Doctor Pretorius's House of Horrors or whatever, where it's just him making these homunculi, making this thing, and then going off and joining the carnival. And somebody says like, oh my god, you're conducting these terrible science experiments, and like he has to go off and like kill people, and then like his like little homunculi have to go off and like kill people for him and stuff. Like, again, there's a whole movie that's off screen here.
I feel like they even dropped the ball on not having Pretorius just outright kill Frankenstein's wife and use her brain for the bride or something like that. That feels like something they could have done. And it would,
I feel like they wanted the sort of happy ending for the couple because like that's sort of like the catharsis moment for the monster. I guess he lets them go in the end. Like
I guess that's the post-code thing because it's like Frankenstein's a piece of shit. He doesn't deserve the happy ending either.
Right. Sure. I mean, who knows? There's a lot of. I mean, the moral complexity here is really interesting, and I don't think the film really explores it. But the film is definitely sort of interested in at least presenting us with these kind of like very flawed characters, and then sort of like letting them kind of go about their business, and we can kind of again as film people can kind of examine that. because you're right. Like Frankenstein is not in any way like a decent person. He doesn't deserve a happy ending.
No.
But Pretorius is way worse, right? Like
yeah.
And possibly Frankenstein's wife deserved not to die. So
yeah, no, she's fine. But it's like
in a more modern reading, you can kind of see that either the wife gets away or her brain gets used for the bride. And the bride gets away because the bride is kind of blameless and, the wife is kind of blameless. But Frankenstein brings the house down on himself and Frankenstein and Pretorius, right? Like that's kind of the more like modern way that we do this.
Or it's the bride pulls the switch, or the bride in Frankenstein. If it's the Frankenstein's monster from the text, which is the much more intelligent, learned monster that, improves himself and strives to become the man that his father envisioned him to be.
Right. I haven't read the original text, honestly, so Okay.
But hey, the bride and the monster actually hook up and say "fuck these people," and they pull the switch and escape the lab.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah.
Like, I'm up for that too. But talking about that last scene, so one of the most iconic fucking monsters in the Universal horror thing is the bride, and she's only on screen for like 3 minutes.
Yeah, no, it's amazing how little screen time she gets versus how iconic she is. And it's because that fucking hair and that streak in the hair and the like wardrobe and everything, and also the performance. Like, it's a phenomenal performance. Like,
she acts like a
what's
bird.
her name? Elsa Lanchester does 2 great performances in this film. Add her to our podcast girlfriend list. We're good.
No, definitely. She moves like a fucking bird. I guess she actually patterned her performance after Geese, I guess. If I'm not mistaken. And she sort of moves like a bird, and she kind of like hisses and like screams like a fucking goose, I guess, is kind of like the way she was going for it, because she apparently hated geese. She thought they were awful, disgusting fucking creatures. So yeah, there you go. But
she and I have something in common. No, that's fine.
Yeah, no, geese are crap.
I have been personally threatened by a goose before.
They're awful fucking dinosaurs that should be exterminated.
Because there was a pond like this. The university I attended back in the day had like the big duck pond, and there was like one goose there. And at one point, the goose had like eggs, and I didn't know there were eggs anywhere around. But you get within like 20 feet of that fucking nest, and that goose will come and threaten to eat your balls. That's what happens, Like, that goose was a mean motherfucker, and I don't blame her. But it's terrifying. It's terrifying.
Hashtag fuck all geese. But yeah, that final scene's so great because he brings back the lab, brings back all the scale of the lab, where he has to raise it up to catch the lightning and all that shit. There's just when Frankenstein's monster decides to go batshit crazy, there's that one really great shot that looks down into the lab for a minute and sort of sweeps down. It's like, wow, you only did one of those in this movie. you could have done a bunch of those in this movie, but you did at least one. But
your money shot, yeah.
But all the lab, and I'd argue like the bride's hair, totally German expressionism. The bride's hair is kind of like German expressionism in a hairdo kind of thing.
I mean, this is kind of at the beginning of like this is post M, right? And so this is clearly Whale is being inspired by that. And again, I'd be fascinated to do Frankenstein and Bride of Frankenstein as a sort of not even a double feature, but kind of think of it as one movie.
Well, they are a continuation, right?
Because I feel like there is a like structure to this, to where sort of not the literal beginning of the first film, but like very early in the first film, you get the creation of Frankenstein's monster. You get the big like special effects sequence there, but here we wait till the end, where you can imagine if you were just to sort of like sit down and close your eyes and imagine sequel to Frankenstein, Bride of Frankenstein. Now we're going to create the new monster, and it's going to be a woman. And the way we're going to do it is we're going to start the whole thing again. Clearly, in order to get Frankenstein back to us, we need to make him a bride. and then like, you know, I'm just gonna show up and we're gonna have, and now it's a woman and she's got like sexy clothes, and you know, we're gonna entice the monster back to us. And that's not what Whale does at all, right? Like that's not the vision that he gives. He waits to the very end of the film to give us what we think we're going to get at the beginning, and then once she's created, she's like, "Fuck all this noise."
Yeah, fuck this.
You know?
She seems more interested in fucking Frankenstein than she does anybody else. Like instead of the monster or anybody else, she's like she keeps moving towards Frankenstein himself. So so
she's like Frankenstein, that guy, awkward incel douchebag. No, I need the hot guy. I
need Doctor Frankenstein.
Yeah, there we go. Yeah.
So budget for this was $397,000. It went about $100,000 over budget apparently for shooting here, but still it made $2 million in the box office. So
yeah, it made shitloads of money. Yeah.
Yeah,
it is funny that like, even adjusted for inflation, I think that's only like $5 million or something like that. You know, or it's a few $1 million. It does feel like, you know, wouldn't it be nice if we had like a whole bunch of $20 million movies that were like actually interesting, as opposed to like a handful of $200 million movies that are all the same.
Yeah.
As much as I do like the Marvel movies, like let's not like I'm a fan of the Marvel movies.
We're doing a fucking side podcast on them, so.
Yeah. But it would be really nice to get the smaller budget movies, which is, you know, kind of I was reading an article about Bill and Ted Face the Music, which I still haven't seen. I've been wanting to see it. I was just kind of, I just haven't had the time to kind of sit down and watch it. And, you know, that movie, you know, it cost like $20 million, $25 million because Keanu Reeves didn't take his normal salary. And, you know, it's made his money back. It's making a profit for the studio, even just on video on demand in the middle of the pandemic. Well, maybe the pandemic is going to force the studios to make smaller budget movies that are actually going to like make money on video on demand. You know, maybe we get like the smaller budget stuff. Like, who knows?
I kind of doubt it.
I doubt it as well. I'm just hoping and praying for two things.
I know.
One, a certain person has coronavirus, and two, smaller movies get made based on like an end to the modern system theatrical distribution. Just rebuild from the ashes. The movie industry just needs to change fundamentally, and this is the moment when it's going to happen, right? Neither of these things is going to happen. It's only going to consolidate the forces of the largest companies on earth to control the media that we consume. You're only going to get the cookie cutter process approved things for all time. But that's not what I want to happen. So I'm just saying it out loud so that maybe somebody will listen. But
I'm with you, but I foresee nothing else but a continued Disney monopoly on everything.
Yeah, Disney's just going to own everything from this point forward. Yeah. Who owns Universal at this point? There's got to be some big company that owns Universal. It's probably Disney. Disney, like the Bride of Frankenstein is a Disney princess now. That's what we are.
So the director's cut for this was 87 minutes long. Imagine that.
2 minutes longer? Yeah.
No, 87 minutes long. That's almost 10 minutes more longer or whatever.
Oh, okay.
It's 75 minutes in its current form. But producer Carl Lamel Jr. imposed a number of cuts to tame down the director's excesses, quote unquote. The prologue was cut, making difficult to understand the present dialogue. The body count, apparently there was a big body count here. It was reduced from 21 to 10. 2 love scenes between the couple and a toy representing the monster with the child has been deleted. Okay, those are 2 separate things. There was not a love scene with couples and a toy.
With the child. Like, no, that doesn't sound like something that would have gotten muster in 1935. But.
Yeah. So all this 12-minute footage has been lost, and apparently it's nowhere. So
it's sitting somewhere alongside the missing footage from Magnificent Ambersons. That's what's happening. Yeah.
This was remade in 1985 as The Bride, and there is still an unmade remake that's in development hell that was supposed to be part of the Universal Dark Universe thing that flopped terribly.
That flopped terribly when like the Tom Cruise mummy thing was terrible.
God, that's one of the worst movies I've ever seen in my life. It's so bad.
Angelina Jolie is the bride of Frankenstein.
I mean, that's a great idea, but fucking... I mean, to actually have like a movie about the Bride of Frankenstein and actually have her do stuff instead of being on screen for 3 minutes, I like that idea. But Marilyn Harris, who played Maria, the girl the monster accidentally kills in the original Frankenstein, appears uncredited as another young girl. She's the leader of the group of young girls who encounter the monster as he runs away from the blind man's burning house. Whale directly gave her a one-word line, "Look," so she would be paid more as an actual actor instead of a extra. So there you go.
Yeah. Friend of the working class, James Whale.
Yeah. Going into sort of how some of the actors here suffered in this film, Boris Karloff sweated 20 pounds laboring in the hot costume and makeup. When filming a scene where the monster emerges from the burnt windmill, Boris Karloff slipped and fell into a water-filled well. Upon being helped out, it was discovered he had dislocated his hip in the fall. So apparently they had to strap his hip into place, and Karloff soldiered on for the rest of the film. But he did it with a broken hip. Colin Clive as well had a riding accident shortly before the film started and broke his leg. So in most of the scenes, he's not standing; he's sitting apparently, which is something I didn't notice. But apparently, he's not moving around a lot in this film. And also some discomfort here for poor Elsa Lanchester. She was only 5'4", but for the role was placed on stilts that made her 7 feet tall. And you can actually kind of tell that when she starts walking. It's like they have to help her and shit. And I mean, it works for the performance.
It works for the performance. Yeah, no, it works in character. But that's astonishing. Although if she was like 5'4" and she's like little like 2 feet shorter than Karloff, that you can kind of go like slightly different iconic status, I think.
And the bandages on her were placed so tightly on her that she was unable to move and had to be carried about the studio and fed through a straw. So, Jesus. Not cool, but, suffering for their art, I guess, kind of thing.
As long as it's consensual, right? Capitalism ruins everything. Yeah, because it's ultimately just to get paid. But
release info for here. There's
Kubrick would have done worse. Kubrick would have done way worse to these people if he had been in charge.
Imagine the takes he'd put fucking Lanchester through. It's like, no, you gotta stumble on these stilts for 5 hours until we get it right. Like,
we're gonna do this one shot for 2 weeks.
And
at the end, it's no better than the one that's in the film that they did like 3 takes on.
Yeah, no, it's like no one can see the difference in takes but Kubrick because Kubrick's a dick.
That should be kind of that should be the motto of this podcast, right? Like, no one can see the difference in takes but Kubrick because Kubrick's a dick. That should be our motto.
So release info here, Universal Studios Blu-ray. There's a 2013, 14, 16, and 17 edition. Pick and choose, whatever you want. And there's as many DVDs.
Is there a difference? Like, what the fuck? Why release it 4 times? What did you say? Repeat that again. Like 2011, 12, 13, 16, and 17?
13, 14, 16, and 17. So 4
different Blu-rays.
I don't know.
Presumably different in some way?
I think one of them's a steelbook release, kind of thing.
Oh, okay, like that sort of, but they're not.
I don't think there's any. Well, I was reading that some of the earlier Universal Studios DVD and Blu-ray releases were not remastered. I think I mentioned that on one of our previous films we covered.
Sure. Yeah. So
there was a sort of an outcry that Universal doesn't give a fuck about these movies. They're just putting them on discs and not cleaning them up. So I think the earlier ones are probably look a little less in quality compared to some of the later ones. But I can't see there being too many differences in extras. If anything, like it feels maybe the later ones would be budget versions without a lot of the extras on them, probably.
Right.
I didn't look into it, but studios sometimes do that shit, right?
Right.
Especially
with a film from like 1935, it does feel like, you did 4 releases in like 4 years. Like that's
and there's as many DVD releases. There's 4 or 5 fucking Universal box set releases too that you can get. So these are all, like the single disc releases of those, basically. You can also get it on YouTube to buy and rent, iTunes, Amazon Prime. And so, yeah, if you can't find this film, that's on you more than anybody else.
I rented it from YouTube. It looked fine. So.
Yeah, it looked great. So what are we doing next? 39 Steps or Mad Love? Which one do you want to...
Is that where we are? 36?
Yeah, we were 35. We were gonna clear out 35 this month.
Oh, okay, yeah. Sorry, I was looking forward to 36. So let's do 39 steps. Let's do 39 steps.
Cool.
Yeah.
So that'll be it. Daniel, tell people where they can find you on the interwebs.
Well, you can find me on the internet. I'm on Twitter at Daniel E. Harper if you care to go follow me. I am officially above 6,000 followers. I'm at like 6,030 or something, which I was hovering around 6,000. I complained about it last time. And then, some Nazi shit happened, and I always get like an influx of followers when Nazi shit happens.
Yeah.
And by Nazi shit happens, I mean, the President of the United States said like, oh, yeah, that armed militia, that armed street gang that supports me, stand by. And, and then people follow me. That's what happens, when massacres or whatever. That's how I get Twitter followers. I would really like to not get any more Twitter followers. But if you want to come follow me, you can follow me there. In case you do not know from the previous thing that I was just talking about, I do a podcast about terrible people. About Nazis and the things that they say when they don't think that we're listening. It's called I Don't Speak German. You can find it at idon'tspeakgerman.libsyn.com. And it's pretty good. Go check it out.
It's very good. You can find us at tmbdos.podbean.com, where you can find all the sort of associated podcasts to this now, and all of our links to, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, Facebook. You can join the Facebook group. You can send us messages there, or you can actually send in messages on MP3. If you look into the Podbean site, you can find my email address there and send audio messages, and we have the ability to play it. At least I think we do. I think I got my soundboard problems fucking.
Yeah, we've been having some soundboard issues in the last few episodes, but it's fine. It's fine. We'll work it out.
It's fine. I'm just half stupid. But yeah, you can do that, and you can find us. And until then. Thank you, Daniel, and thank you all for listening, and we will see you again. Goodbye.
Cheers.
Love is strange. Lot of people take it for a game. Once you get
Now you call your lover boy.
Come here, lover boy.
And if he doesn't answer?
Oh, lover boy.
And if he still doesn't answer?
I simply say, baby. Oh, baby. My sweet baby. You're the one. Baby. Oh, baby. My sweet baby. You're the one.
Thank you for listening to They Must Be Destroyed on Sight. For further episodes, our Apple Podcasts, Facebook, and YouTube links, please go to tmbdos.podbean.com. Thank you. Drive through.